3 months on the Atlantic, and the first thing I saw when I got home wasn't the front door. It was the hurricane lantern on the porch rail, brass polished bright, wick trimmed like someone had been there that morning. I hadn't turned the knob when I heard footsteps on the grass. Marlowe came running through that golden late afternoon light, face glowing. I leaned on the doorframe. "Did you miss me?" She stopped one step away, color flooding her cheeks. "More than you know." I laughed. I didn't hear it, what those words actually carried. "But you just did." "My name is Jasper Dunn. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 12 years, since I was 22, I've worked as a bosun on ocean-going cargo ships. Bosun, if you want the full title. Deck chief, if you want the honest one. I manage the crew topside. I tie what needs tying, repair what breaks at 2 in the morning when nobody else wants to crawl out of their rack, and I make sure nobody goes overboard when the Atlantic decides to remind every man on deck how small he really is. It is not glamorous work. It is the kind of work that puts calluses on your hands and silence in your chest, and after enough years that silence stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like company. I live in Savannah, Georgia. Oleander Street. A small craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch and live oaks out front that drape moss like they have nowhere to be. The neighborhood is the quiet kind, people wave from their porches and the ice cream truck still comes through on Saturday afternoons. The house is mine. Has been since the divorce. Deirdre. We married when I was 25. Divorced at 30. 5 years. She was the kind of woman who filled a room the moment she walked through the door, her voice, her energy, her opinions about everything from dinner to the direction my life should be heading. The first 2 years were good. Year 3 she started to hate the sound of a suitcase zipper. By year 4 she could not stand the sight of my sea bag leaning against the bedroom wall. One night before an Atlantic run she sat across the kitchen table, nothing between us but the wood, and said, "I didn't marry the ocean, Jasper." I did not answer. Because she was right, and there is no argument you can build against a true thing. No children between us. We split clean, not kind, but clean. She took her freedom to Atlanta. I kept the house and the quiet that settled in behind her like it had been waiting for its turn. 12 years at sea taught me one thing: you don't remember the water. You remember the shore. And my shore was that little house on Oleander, where someone lit a brass hurricane lantern on the porch every single night even when I was 6,000 miles away with nothing but ocean in every direction. That someone was Marlowe Kincaid. We met at a neighborhood cookout the summer I turned 27, through a buddy down the block. She lived a few streets over. 7 years of friendship, the easy, uncomplicated kind that shows up when it is needed and never makes a performance out of being there. No agenda. No keeping score. After the divorce, when I needed someone I trusted to watch the house between voyages, check the mail, run the faucets, make sure the porch did not rot in the Savannah humidity, she was the only name I thought of. I handed her a spare key one afternoon on the porch. She dropped it on her keyring without a question. The first time I came home on leave after the split, the place was different. Kitchen sink, no rust ring. Grass cut even. And on the porch, right beside the front door, a brass hurricane lantern I had never seen. Old, heavy, thick glass chimney. The wick smelled of lamp oil. I asked Marlowe. She shrugged. Found it in your garage. Set it out so the house doesn't look empty. Keeps people from nosing around. 3.5 years. Every single evening she had walked over and lit that wick. 3.5 years of matches struck and flame tended, and she talked about it like it was nothing at all. Now I was back, not on leave, but for good. Shore position at the port of Savannah. My last voyage done. For the first time in 12 years, I unpacked my sea bag and hung it in the closet instead of leaving it by the door. I was not counting down to anything. That first night home, the fridge was stocked. Fresh towels in the bathroom. Sheets that smelled like a softener I had never purchased. All Marlowe. I sat on the porch after dark, watched the old lantern glass catch the last glow of dusk, listened to the crickets warming up in the live oaks, and thought, I am a lucky man to have a friend like that. Just a friend. That first week set a pattern neither of us talked about but both of us kept. Marlowe let herself in every morning. No knock, just the soft click of the key, her footsteps crossing the kitchen floor, 2 mugs lifted from the cabinet and set on the counter. By the time I came downstairs, coffee was made, fixed the way I take it, which she knew without ever having been told. She would be sitting in the chair by the window, legs tucked under her, reading something on her phone like she had been there for hours, like that chair had always been hers. The steam from her cup curled up into the morning light and disappeared. One morning I stopped in the doorway, leaned against the frame, and said, You know you have your own house, right? She did not look up. Your coffee's better. I laughed. Took my mug. Did not think twice about it. Did not think once. I started my shore position that second week. Left mornings, home by late afternoon. Marlowe would come by in the evenings, sometimes with food she had made, sometimes with nothing but herself, said she was helping me adjust to life on solid ground after 12 years of decks that never stopped moving. And she knew things about my own house that I did not. She knew exactly which shelf the glasses went on and which cabinet door swung open on its own if you did not push it shut all the way. She knew I woke at 2 in the morning for water every single night, a habit I had carried off the ship like luggage I could not set down. She knew the kitchen faucet had to be turned 20 degrees off center or it would drip until morning. One evening I leaned against the counter and stared at her. How do you know all of this? She met my eyes, steady, direct, holding, and then her gaze slid to the window. For years watching your house, Jasper. You really think I wasn't paying attention? Her voice was easy. Light. But her eyes had gone somewhere I could not follow, somewhere behind a door she had closed so gently I did not even hear it shut. I did not catch what that meant. Not even close. By the third week we had settled into something that felt warmer than routine but that I still did not have a name for. Something with a current running underneath, something I could feel against my skin but could not see when I looked down. I went over to her place one afternoon to fix a bookshelf pulling away from the plaster. She stood beside me the whole time, handing tools one by one. When she passed the wrench, her fingers closed over mine and held. One beat longer than they needed to. Maybe 2. I felt the warmth of her hand and the slight pressure of her fingertips, but I told myself it was nothing. She stepped back half a step without a word, folded her arms, and watched me work. I went back to the wall anchors and did not think about it again. A few evenings later I was cooking at my place, simple pasta, garlic and olive oil, the kitchen filling up with that warm sharp smell that makes a house feel occupied. Marlowe was at the sink washing plates from the night before. My kitchen is small, 2 people standing in it means standing close enough to share the same air. I turned to grab the towel off the oven handle and my face ended up 3 inches from hers. She did not move. Not 1 inch. Her eyes came up to mine and locked there, and for one full breath the room went completely still, even the garlic stopped hissing in the pan, and then she stepped sideways and said, Water's boiling. I looked at the stove. There was no pot on any burner. No water boiling anywhere in that kitchen. I turned back to the counter without a second thought. She had already crossed to the far side of the room, arms folded, looking out the window at the darkening street like she needed to look at something, anything, that was not my face. Around the 4th week I stepped onto the porch after dark and found her kneeling beside the hurricane lantern, both hands cupped around a lit match, shielding the flame from the evening breeze with the kind of care you give to something that matters more than it should. The fire caught the wick and steadied into its rhythm. I leaned on the porch post. You know I'm home now, right? You don't have to keep lighting that. She did not look up. Kept her hand on the glass until the flame held steady. Habit, she said. One word. Softer than the match. I sat in the chair beside her, stretched my legs out, listened to the cricket start up in the oaks, and did not press. But that night, lying in bed with the ceiling fan turning slow and the faint smell of lamp oil drifting through the screen, I turned that word over and over like a coin I could not identify. Habit. Who keeps a habit for 3.5 years for someone who is not family? Who walks over every single evening, July heat, January cold, Savannah rain that soaks you to the bone, to light a lantern on a dark porch for a man who could be anchored off the coast of Portugal or running containers through the Strait of Gibraltar? I lay there staring at the ceiling and could not build an answer that added up to just friendship. But I was not ready to build a different one either. So I tucked the question behind my ribs and closed my eyes. Then came a Saturday night deep into the 5th week. A Savannah rain, the kind that falls straight down, heavy and warm, no wind behind it, no angle, just weight, and it has no intention of stopping before it is good and ready. Marlowe was at the house when the sky broke open, and there was no walking home through that kind of water. So we sat on the porch, 2 chairs turned toward the street, the hurricane lantern glowing low between us, and we listened to the rain hammer the tin overhang like 1,000 small drums. Nobody spoke. It was not the kind of silence that needs filling. It was the kind that holds you, that wraps around 2 people and says, "Stay right here. This is enough." After a long while, long enough for the downpour to soften into a steady murmur, she said, very quietly, almost to herself, "I like this." "Like what?" I asked. She did not answer. Just watched the rain come down through the amber glow of the streetlight. The lantern flame played across one side of her face, and she looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy and precious for a very long time without ever setting it down. I watched her watching the rain, and for the first time, the very first time, something deep in my chest shifted. Not a thought. Not a decision. A feeling. Something that did not ask permission, just walked in and stood there quietly, waiting to be acknowledged. A warmth I had not yet earned. A weight I did not know how to hold. But I said nothing. I had lived long enough inside the wreckage of one broken thing to understand this: do not put a name on something until you are certain it can survive the naming. For years she had watched this house. She knew it better than I did, which drawer stuck, which bulb burned out every other month, the loose board on the 3rd porch step that no visitor would ever notice. My name was on the deed. But Marlowe was the one who had kept it a home all those years I was out on the water, somewhere between here and the other side of the world. That night, after she walked home through the last of the drizzle, I sat alone in the dark and listened to the silence the rain had left behind. The lantern was still burning between 2 empty chairs, its flame holding steady against the damp. And I kept coming back to that single word. Habit. Said so carefully. So softly. It sounded less like a habit and more like a confession she was not quite ready to finish. Week 7. A text I did not expect. Deirdre. I heard you're back. For good this time. Can we talk? The tone was light. Casual. The kind of friendly I had learned over 5 years of marriage to recognize as strategic. There was always math behind her warmth, always a second set of numbers running somewhere in the background. But I have never been the kind of man who refuses a conversation, even when I can feel the angle. So I said yes. She came to the house on a Thursday. Walked in the way she always had, loud. Voice filling the room before the rest of her caught up, laughing at things only she found funny, eyes scanning every surface like she was running an appraisal. I stood by the kitchen and watched her gaze stop on 3 things: the mug in the dish rack, not mine, different shape, someone else's daily cup. The jasmine vine winding up the porch railing, I have never planted a living thing in my life. And the brass hurricane lantern beside the front door, glass spotless, wick freshly trimmed. Who planted the jasmine? She asked. Casual voice. Careful eyes. Marlowe. Silence. The kind that rolls in right before weather. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, folded her hands the way she always did when she was about to deliver something rehearsed, and said she had been doing a lot of thinking. That leaving was a mistake, her mistake, she was willing to say it. That now I was home for good, settled, stable, earning steady, maybe we owed it to ourselves to try one more time. She said it all smoothly, like she had practiced in the car on the way over. I listened. Did not interrupt. Let her talk until the words ran dry. But I knew what I was hearing. This was not love finding its way home. This was regret arriving at the door of a life that had turned out far better than she had predicted when she walked away from it 4 years ago. I told her no. Gently. Clearly. We ended at the right time, Deirdre. I don't want to go back. She did not explode. Not yet. She smiled, that specific smile I knew from the last years of our marriage, the one that said I am not done with this. The one that always meant she would come back carrying something with an edge. She came back the following week. This time she was not asking. She was delivering. She had spent the week talking to the neighbors. Mrs. Eleanor at the end of the block, the woman who watched the street from her front window like it was her sworn duty and committed every coming and going to memory. Deirdre now knew that Marlowe came to my house every single morning before the sun was fully up. That she had been lighting the lantern every single evening, 3.5 years running, without missing a night, not in summer, not in winter, not during the worst storm Savannah could throw. That Marlowe had planted the jasmine, painted the porch rail, changed the bed sheets between my voyages, stocked the refrigerator before every homecoming, replaced the broken window latch one winter when the temperature dropped. She had gathered every last detail the way a prosecutor assembles evidence, patient, thorough, building toward a verdict, and now she was ready to deliver it. She sat across from me. Voice controlled. Almost cold. You know your friend is in love with you. Right? I did not answer. Let me spell it out for you, since you clearly aren't going to get there on your own. She loves you. Has for a long time. Probably from before you and I even finished falling apart. Every single thing she has done, the house, the lantern, the jasmine, the faucet, the sheets, the groceries, none of that is friendship, Jasper. That is a long game. She sat there and waited for me to leave, and the second I was gone, she stepped right in. I wanted to say, that's not what happened. I wanted it to be my answer, clean and immediate. But then the memories came, stacking up one on top of the other, and each one landed heavier than the last. The wrench, her fingers lingering on mine one beat too long. Habit, whispered so softly it barely counted as a word. Eyes that slid away every single time I asked something that got too close. The rainy Saturday, I like this, and the silence after, heavy and shaped, pressing against the air between us like something that had mass and weight and took up physical space. Deirdre read my face. She always could. She smiled. You're seeing it now. Here is the thing. The problem was not that Deirdre was lying. The problem was that she was telling the truth, every fact was accurate. But she had wrapped those true facts inside a frame that turned everything Marlowe had ever done into something cold and calculated. Long game. Stepped right in. As if Marlowe had been circling my marriage like something patient, waiting for the last ember to go dark so she could move in on what was left. That was the frame. And it was poison. Because once you wrap that frame around honest things, the honest things stop looking honest. The jasmine stops being a gift and becomes a claim. The lantern stops being devotion and becomes positioning. 3.5 years of quiet faithfulness gets rewritten as 3.5 years of strategy. And the worst part is, once you see it that way, you cannot unsee it. Not easily. Not fast. I said nothing more. Deirdre collected her things and left. Next morning, Marlowe came with coffee. I took the mug but could barely speak. She looked at me, head tilted slightly. You okay? I said, tired. She nodded. Did not push. But as she walked down the porch steps I saw it, for the first time I actually let myself see it, her eyes when she turned away. Not angry. Not confused. Not asking for anything. Just quietly, deeply worried. About me. Only about me. I kept my distance for 3 full days. Did not call. Did not return her texts. Did not go over to her place. Did not sit on the porch at the hour she usually stopped by. I moved through my house like a man trying to make himself invisible in a space that suddenly felt too full of someone else's fingerprints. Thursday evening she came by and knocked on the front door. I sat in the dark living room, 5 feet from the door, and did not move. Through the wall I heard her footsteps cross the porch boards. I heard the click and hiss of a match being struck. I heard the lantern glass lift, the small catch of breath as the flame took, the glass settling back into place with a sound like a whisper. Then footsteps going the other way. Growing fainter. Then nothing but the night. She still lit the lantern. Even when I sat in the dark 5 feet away and would not open the door. I stayed there a long time with the amber glow bleeding through the front window, painting one thin stripe of warm light across the floor. Deirdre's voice kept turning in my head. Long game. I wanted to throw those words in the trash where they belonged. But the lantern was burning on the other side of the glass, and Marlowe's footsteps had faded into the savannah night, and I could not stop turning it over in my head. 3 days of silence. I knew I could not stretch it any further, not because I had found my answer, but because the silence was hurting her and she had no idea why. I called Marlowe. Asked her to come by. She walked up the steps 20 minutes later. No coffee in her hands. First time in 6 weeks she had shown up with nothing to carry, nothing to offer, nothing to put between us. She sat down carefully, like the chair might not hold what was coming. She knew something was wrong. She had known for 3 days, and the not knowing why was written all over her. We sat on the porch. The hurricane lantern sat between the 2 chairs, cold and dark. Unlit. I kept my voice low and even. Deirdre came by last week. She said you're in love with me. She said everything you've done, the house, the lantern, all of it, was never about friendship. Silence. Long silence. Marlowe's gaze dropped to the lantern. She stared at the dark glass chimney like it was the only safe place in the world to look. Is that true? I asked. She did not deny it. When she spoke her voice was so low I had to lean forward in the chair to hear. I've loved you since before she left, Jasper. Maybe since the 2nd year we knew each other. But you had a wife, and I am not the kind of person who breaks things that belong to someone else. I would not do that. After the divorce, I still did not say it. Because I was terrified that saying it out loud would cost me the only thing I had left. And what I had, every morning in your kitchen making coffee nobody asked me to make, every evening walking over here to light a lantern nobody asked me to light, every phone call you made from some port I couldn't even find on a map, it was enough. It wasn't enough. But it was so much more than nothing. I asked about the lantern. She raised her eyes and looked at me, really looked, for the first time since she had sat down. Every night I lit it, I told myself the same thing, he is on his way home. That was not strategy, Jasper. That was not a long game. It was the only way I knew how to feel close to you when you were half a world away and I did not know if you were safe or cold or tired or lonely. Some nights, standing on this porch in the dark with a match in my hand and nothing but crickets for company, lighting that lantern was the only thing that kept the distance from swallowing me whole. A long silence settled over the porch. Crickets in the live oaks. A dry leaf scraping the gutter. Somewhere down the block a screen door clicked shut. The neighborhood was going to sleep while 2 people sat perfectly still in the dark with the truth laid out between them like something fragile. I said, Deirdre told me you were calculating. Marlowe nodded slowly. I know how it looks from the outside. I do. But I am not asking you to believe me, Jasper. I'm only asking you to look back at the last 4 years, at everything, and decide for yourself. She stood up. Walked down the steps. Walked home in the dark without turning around. She did not wait for an answer. She did not ask for one. She left the truth on the porch and let it sit there beside me. I stayed for a long time. Stared at the lantern between the 2 empty chairs. Unlit. Cold brass catching no light at all in the warm night. I went through the 4 years in my head, one piece at a time, turning each one over like a stone in my hand. She took the key. Watched the house. Fixed what needed fixing. Kept the grass cut and the porch painted and the lantern lit. Never asked for a single thing in return. Never once complained that I was gone for months at a stretch, that I missed holidays, that I called from time zones she had to look up. Never spoke the words, "I'm waiting for you." She just was there. Every morning, coffee on the counter. Every evening, a match struck and a wick lit. No announcements. No conditions. No demands. No score being kept, no receipt being saved. Just presence, steady, patient, faithful, year after year after year. Calculating. A calculating person does not crawl under a kitchen sink at midnight to fix a dripping faucet for a man who will not be home for 3 months. A calculating person does not walk 6 blocks every single evening for 3.5 years to light a lantern that nobody sees except Mrs. Eleanor watering her azaleas at the end of the block. I picked up the matchbox from the porch rail. Lifted the glass chimney. Struck a match. Watched the flame lean toward the wick, catch, flicker once, then hold steady, that small amber circle of light that had been burning on this porch for 3.5 years without me. I did not call her. Did not text. Just lit the lantern. 20 minutes later I heard footsteps on the sidewalk. Slow. Careful. Almost hesitant. Marlowe stopped at the bottom step. Looked up at the porch. Looked at the lantern, burning. Looked at me, sitting in the chair beside it. I did not say a word. She did not say a word. She came up the steps and sat down in the chair on the other side of the lantern. That was the answer. For both of us. We did not change overnight. Next morning she came with coffee, but she did not take the chair by the window. She sat beside me at the kitchen counter, close enough that our elbows nearly touched. Neither of us mentioned the night before. We did not need to. Whatever had shifted was already present in everything, the way she passed the sugar without being asked, the way I poured her second cup before she finished the first, the way the silence between us had changed shape, from comfortable to something warmer, something humming beneath the surface like a current you cannot see but feel in your fingertips when you lay your hand on the rail. The shift came in small things. I started listening for the sound of her key each morning, and if it came late, I noticed. She began leaving her mug in my sink instead of carrying it home. I cooked dinner for 2 instead of 1. She stayed later every evening, and neither of us commented on it because commenting would have meant putting borders around something that was better left open. We went to dinner for the first time, just the 2 of us, no pretense of it being casual. A small riverside place downtown, string lights looped over the patio, a warm breeze carrying salt and mud off the Savannah River. Tables close together, other couples talking softly, candlelight doubling itself on the dark water. Neither of us used the word date. But I put on a button-down shirt for the first time since coming ashore, and she noticed immediately. Looked at the collar, then at my face, and smiled without saying a single word. That smile said more than a sentence could have. Somewhere around the 2nd month it happened. On the porch, where every important thing between us had always taken place. The lantern was burning, that steady amber glow filling the space between the chairs. She was telling me about her day. I could not repeat the details now if you paid me. What I remember is the way she stopped mid-sentence. Turned her head. Looked at me with something unguarded in her expression, something she had kept behind a locked door for years. And I leaned across and kissed her. It was brief. Neither of us tried to push past it. She laid her hand over mine on the armrest of my chair, and we sat there for another hour without a word. The lantern burned slow and steady beside us, and when the wick finally drank the last of the oil and the flame flickered out, we did not reach for a match. The dark was fine. The dark had earned its place between us. By the third month, her toothbrush appeared in my bathroom. I did not ask when. She did not explain. I emptied a drawer in the bedroom dresser and left it standing open without a word. Next morning the drawer had clothes in it. That was the entire conversation, conducted in objects and gestures, not a single word spoken, everything understood. I took her to the port one Saturday morning, first time I had ever let anyone into that part of my life. We walked to the end of the commercial dock and stood at the railing watching a container ship ease from its berth, slow as something being released from a long grip. The horn sounded once, deep, low, the kind of sound that crosses the water and the marshes and settles inside your chest where it hums for a while after. She stood beside me, watching the ship grow smaller against the sky, and said quietly, "Now I understand why you loved it." I watched the vessel pull toward the channel markers, the wake fanning out white and wide behind it, and said, "I don't love it anymore. I love the shore." She did not answer. But her hand found mine on the metal railing, and her fingers tightened, and that was everything either of us needed. Around month 4, a voicemail. Deirdre. 2 minutes long. Her voice was not cold this time, just tired, like the fight had finally left her body. She said I was making a mistake. Said Marlowe would not wait forever. She had no idea that Marlowe had already stopped waiting. "You'll miss me," she said at the end, and the recording cut to silence. I deleted it without replaying it. Did not call back. Deirdre never reached out again. She simply faded from the story the way people do when you stop giving them a door to walk through. The 5th month was nothing anyone would put in a film. No milestones. No grand speeches. No moment where the music swells and somebody says the perfect thing at the perfect time. Just mornings, coffee in a small kitchen, her sitting next to me at the counter, sunlight coming through the window over the sink and warming both our hands around our mugs. Just evenings, porch, lantern, 2 chairs side by side. Some nights she stayed. Some she walked the few blocks home. No pressure either direction. No rush at all. We had spent enough years on patience to know it was not the weakness in our story, it was the foundation holding everything up. I started sleeping through the night, first time in 12 years. No more jolting awake at 3 in the morning, heart hammering, hand reaching for a watch schedule that no longer existed. She made breakfast on Sundays, eggs scrambled soft, toast with too much butter, orange juice she squeezed by hand from fruit she brought over on Saturdays. I washed the dishes while she sat on the counter and talked about the week ahead. It was routine, yes, but not ordinary. I understood what every quiet morning had cost us. I knew the weight of years of silence, 3 days of closed doors, and one struck match on a dark porch that it had taken to arrive somewhere this simple and this good. One evening around month 6 I stepped out onto the porch and stopped. The lantern was not beside the front door anymore. Marlowe had moved it. It sat between the 2 chairs now, perfectly centered, equal distance from both. "Why'd you move it?" I asked. She looked at the flame burning inside the glass. "Because it's not waiting for someone to come home anymore. It's here because we're both here." I looked at the lantern. 3.5 years it had stood alone beside the door, burning every night for a man on the far side of the ocean. Now it sat in the middle, same distance from both chairs. Not watching the street. Not counting the days. Just shining. For 2 people who were already home. That was the moment I knew we were going to be all right. I used to believe love had to be loud. Deirdre taught me that, whether she meant to or not. Love was arguing. Demanding. Declaring your needs at full volume across a kitchen table. I need you here, Jasper. Love was the loudest voice in the room, or it was not real. Then I met Marlo. And she never raised her voice. Never declared a single thing. Never asked me to come home. Never told me to stay. She just walked to my porch every evening for 3.5 years, struck a match, and lit a lantern. And she never once asked anyone to notice. She did not tell me to stay. She just quietly turned home into something worth coming back to. Maybe that is what real love is. Not the loudest voice. Not the grand declarations or the fights that rattle the windows. Just a lantern someone keeps burning when the rest of the world has gone dark, not because anyone asked them to, but because they cannot bring themselves to let it go out. If you are lucky, if you are truly, deeply lucky, one day you will walk through your front door, see the light already burning, and finally understand, it never once went out. Is there someone in your life right now who has been keeping a light on for you, and you just have not seen it yet? And if you were Marlo, would you have had the patience to keep that flame burning for 3.5 years? If this story reached something inside you, I am asking one thing: hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments, who is the hurricane lantern in your life? I read every single one. See you in the next story.